Most people who stumble across Zach Johnson's videos assume he got famous by pointing a phone at a tractor. That's the easy version of the story, and it's not even close to the whole truth. Nobody who knew him growing up expected any of this. Not the millions of views, not the seven-figure business, not the tragedy that would reshape his entire mission, and definitely not the identity crisis that came bundled with all that success. Zach thought he'd spend his whole life quietly working the same stretch of Minnesota dirt his family had farmed since before cars existed. Then one small, almost accidental decision blew that plan wide open. So what actually happened to Zach Johnson, and how did a guy who just wanted people to stop yelling about GMOs online end up building one of the biggest agricultural media companies on the internet? Zach Johnson didn't grow up dreaming about YouTube. He grew up in Lowry, Minnesota, the fifth generation of his family to work that particular patch of ground. His people weren't always Minnesotans either. His great-great-great-grandparents left Sweden for the United States back in 1868, and used the Homestead Act to stake their claim on the land the Johnsons still farm today. For more than 150 years, that family did one thing. They planted, they grew, they harvested, and they passed the operation down. Nobody in that lineage was thinking about subscriber counts or sponsorship deals. The job was the land, full stop. By the mid-2010s, though, something else was eating at Zach. He kept running into the same wall online, comment sections full of people convinced that farmers like him were poisoning the water supply, torturing the soil with chemicals, and getting rich off GMOs at everyone else's expense. It wasn't just insulting, it felt absurd. Zach's own kids drank from the same wells sitting under those fields. His own family swam in the same lakes that farm runoff eventually reached. The idea that he didn't care about any of that never sat right with him. In April 2016, instead of typing out another reply nobody would read, Zach set his phone on a dusty oil drum in the corner of his shed and just started talking. He explained, plainly and without a script, what he was actually planning to do that growing season. Plant a crop, raise it, and see it through to harvest, camera rolling the whole way. No lighting kit, no editing software, no plan beyond show people the real thing. He called the channel Millennial Farmer. The early uploads were about as unglamorous as content gets. Spring tillage, equipment checks, planter adjustments, the daily grind of running a corn and soybean operation. His first real viral moment paid him a grand total of $92. A number that sounds like a joke but at the time felt like proof of concept. People he'd never met were watching a guy talk about fertilizer rates and asking for more. The real turning point came in fall 2017. A video showing harvest prep and combines rolling through the fields pulled in 100,000 views in just a few days. City and suburban viewers who'd never given a second thought to where their food came from were suddenly hooked. By the end of that harvest, the channel had jumped from around 7,000 subscribers to 30,000. Zach set what felt like an ambitious target: 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2018. He blew past it. The channel closed out that year with more than 200,000 followers, a number that stunned even him. One of the videos that really cemented his reputation had nothing to do with strategy at all. It was pure bad luck caught on camera. A clip titled "Tractor Stuck in the MUD," where his 8360 John Deere got buried while his partner Jim tried to help pull it free, ended up becoming his most watched video ever, eventually climbing past 1.6 million views. Zach later credited its popularity to something almost embarrassingly simple. It had a real three-act structure: a setup, a conflict, and a resolution. The same shape as any good story, except this one happened to involve a tractor axle deep in Minnesota mud. While Zach became the face people recognized, his wife Becky became the reason any of it actually worked. Becky wasn't a video editor, a marketer, or a businessperson before any of this started. She'd been a daycare provider. She and Zach both came from working-class rural Minnesota backgrounds, and neither of them had any roadmap for what they were about to build. The shift happened out of pure necessity. Farm days started around 6 a.m. and often didn't end until 11 p.m., especially during planting and harvest. There simply wasn't time for Zach to farm all day, check grain dryers overnight, and also sit down to edit hours of raw footage. So Becky took it on. Every night, a memory card came off the camera and got handed over for editing the next morning. While Zach was out running equipment, Becky was inside cutting clips, writing video descriptions, designing thumbnails, and scheduling uploads. She taught herself advanced editing through online tutorials, took over the channel's finances, negotiated sponsorship deals directly with brands, and ran the social media strategy across every platform the business touched. On top of all of that, she was raising 4 kids, Onyx, Rhiannon, and Isla, plus a niece the family had taken in, while managing a media business that was scaling faster than either of them had prepared for. There was no formal training for any of it. She built the operational backbone of one of YouTube's biggest agricultural brands by figuring it out in real time, night after night, at the kitchen table. By 2019, the numbers had gotten hard to ignore. Zach and Becky sat down and worked out that the YouTube channel was generating roughly 5 times more income than the actual farm. A farm that had supported 5 generations of Johnsons. Industry estimates put the channel's YouTube ad revenue alone at around $290,000 a year. On top of that, sponsorship deals with companies like Farmers Business Network, along with equipment and lubricant brands, reportedly added anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 per branded post. The brand kept expanding in every direction. Merchandise sales moved more than 2,000 pieces in the first 6 days after launch. In 2019, backed by Farmers Business Network as lead sponsor, Zach launched a podcast called Off the Husk, which regularly pulled in 50,000 to 70,000 downloads per episode. According to influencer marketing experts who studied the space, the bulk of creator income in this category typically comes from 2 sources: ad revenue through programs like Google AdSense, and direct brand sponsorships baked into the content itself. And Millennial Farmer had become a rare case of both engines running at full power simultaneously. Beyond the digital income, the brand also branched into the physical world. Zach and his family became co-owners of the Alexandria Shooting Park back in Minnesota, giving the business a foothold outside video content entirely. Zach also wasn't operating in a vacuum. By the late 2010s, FarmTube had become an actual recognized niche on the platform, with a cluster of creators posting everything from row crop updates to livestock operations to homesteading vlogs. Millennial Farmer stood out from that crowd for a specific reason: production value never came first. Viewers weren't tuning in for cinematic drone shots or tight 3-minute edits. They were tuning in because Zach filmed things as they actually happened, including the failures. Stuck tractors, late nights, missed planting windows, and equipment breakdowns all stayed in the final cut instead of getting trimmed out for the sake of a cleaner story. Industry analysts who studied the creator economy around this time pointed to that unscripted honesty as the exact quality that made brand partners comfortable signing on, since audiences trusted the endorsements precisely because nothing else about the channel felt manufactured. That trust translated into real staying power. Where plenty of early YouTube agricultural accounts fizzled out after a season or 2, Millennial Farmer kept compounding, season after season, because the audience wasn't just watching a farmer, they felt like they'd been let into a family's actual life. None of that financial success, though, was the part of the story that would end up mattering most. 2 years into major YouTube success, in December 2019, tragedy hit close to home. 3 members of a farming family nearby, including an 11-year-old boy, died after being overcome by fumes while working inside a grain storage silo just 20 miles from Zach's farm. Local volunteer firefighters tried to mount a rescue but didn't have the specialized equipment needed to do it safely. It wasn't an isolated horror story either. Minnesota and North Dakota were leading the entire country in grain bin-related deaths at the time, and 2 neighbors nearby had already needed rescuing from a grain bin not long before. 4 rural volunteer fire departments, these emergencies weren't rare. They were recurring, and most departments simply didn't have the funding, training, or equipment to handle them. That gap had existed for years quietly, until it landed right on Zach's doorstep. Out of that loss came Harvest Outreach, a nonprofit Zach and Becky built specifically around grain bin rescue equipment and safety education. Rather than just raising awareness, the goal was concrete: get real rescue tools into the hands of the volunteer departments who needed them. Using the same platform that had built the family's income, they launched a fundraising push, and the response blew past expectations. More than $110,000 raised, funding specialized rescue equipment and safety training across an estimated 60 to 70 rural fire departments spanning 13 states. That equipment wasn't symbolic. Gear purchased through the campaign was later credited with helping save a life during a real emergency in Illinois. Proof the whole effort had done exactly what it set out to do. What almost never gets mentioned in the highlight reel version of this story is what all that success cost Zach personally. Farming had always been the thing that was supposed to last forever, the identity passed down for 5 generations. But the channel kept demanding more. More filming, more planning, more travel, more meetings with sponsors. Some weeks, Zach found himself spending more hours managing a media business than actually working the land his family had farmed since the 1870s. His father kept the 2,600-acre operation running day to day, often picking up extra work whenever Zach's media obligations pulled him away from the fields. That support made the balancing act possible, but it also underlined an uncomfortable truth. The business built around documenting farming was quietly eating into the time available for actual farming. There was also the constant, nagging uncertainty that comes with building a business on a platform you don't own. A single algorithm change could gut an income stream overnight in a way that farmland or machinery never could. Zach has talked openly about the possibility of eventually stepping back from uploads to spend more time in the fields, even while the channel kept growing. Two identities pulling in opposite directions. One rooted in 5 generations of tradition, the other built almost by accident out of a phone camera and a dusty oil drum. Despite that private tension, the channel's public reach just kept climbing. Millennial Farmer crossed 1 million subscribers and hundreds of millions of lifetime views, making it the most watched farming channel on YouTube, part of what the platform itself started referring to as FarmTube. And the audience data held a surprise. Roughly half the people watching weren't farmers at all. They were urban and suburban viewers with no connection to agriculture, tuning in purely out of curiosity about where their food actually came from. That shift changed what the channel was fundamentally. It stopped being one farmer talking to other farmers and became a bridge between two worlds that rarely talk to each other directly. Every planting update, every harvest struggle, every honest video about equipment breakdowns or bad weather chipped away at the disconnect between the people growing food and the people eating it. Zach's mission never really changed from that very first oil drum video: become a national voice for agriculture, cut through the misinformation, and let people draw their own conclusions once they'd actually seen how modern farming worked. Family content became a huge part of that bridge too. A video of one of Zach's kids learning to run farm equipment for the first time became one of the channel's most watched uploads ever, pulling in more than 4 million views. Proof that audiences weren't just there for machinery, they wanted to watch a family legacy get handed down in real time. In December 2020, the Johnsons launched a second channel focused purely on family life and dirt track racing, giving fans a look at who they were outside of planting and harvest season. Even the family dog Anna became a recurring fixture in the videos, regularly trotting along behind Zach during farm walkthroughs. The Minnesota Agricultural Foundation eventually recognized the channel with a media award for its transparency and advocacy work. Starting in 2022, Zach also began volunteering with Farm Rescue, helping farmers facing real emergencies while using his platform to raise awareness of the program. A scholarship partnership followed, funding college opportunities for students pursuing agriculture degrees, turning what began as a response to internet criticism into a pipeline supporting the next generation of farmers. Outside the fields, Zach's other interests kept bleeding into the brand in ways nobody could have predicted back in 2016. He's an avid shooting sports enthusiast and became a co-owner of the Alexandria Shooting Park in Minnesota, giving fans of the channel another reason to follow along that had nothing to do with corn or soybeans. Dirt track racing turned into a genuine family hobby rather than a one-off video topic, eventually earning its own dedicated content on the second channel. None of these side interests were part of any deliberate branding strategy, they were simply what the Johnson family actually did in their limited time off, and audiences responded to that the same way they'd responded to the farming content itself. Not because it was polished but because it was real. Public speaking became another unexpected arm of the business. What started as an occasional invitation to talk about direct-to-camera farm content turned into regular appearances at agricultural expos, industry panels, and farm shows across the country. The same events where Zach has said the attention from fans can occasionally get overwhelming, in a way it rarely does back home in Lowry. Being recognized in an airport or a restaurant is one thing. Being recognized by a crowd of a few thousand people at a farm show, all of whom feel like they already know your family, is another. Most retellings of this story stop somewhere around the scholarship program and call it done. What almost nobody covers is what happened once the channel actually reached a full decade online. In September 2024, a major agricultural publication honored Zach for his impact on the industry, timing the recognition deliberately around National Farm Safety Week. Turning 40 around the same period added extra weight to the moment. 8 years of content built on honesty rather than polish, and a career nobody, including Zach, had planned for. By August 2025, subscribers had climbed past 1.2 million, and Zach was invited to moderate a panel at a major Minnesota agricultural event focused on the future of farming. The conversations there got personal fast, touching on the pride and the pressure of potentially raising a 7th generation of Johnsons on that same land his family had worked since 1868. Then came the milestone almost nobody else has covered. In May 2026, the Millennial Farmer channel officially crossed 10 full years online. Minnesota Public Radio marked the anniversary as a rare achievement in an online content landscape where most creators burn out or fade long before the 10-year mark. From $92 for a video shot on a dusty oil drum to a decade-long media brand that's funded rescue equipment across 13 states, put a race car on the internet, and connected millions of people to the fields their food actually comes from, Zach Johnson's story is proof that one honest camera, pointed at real life, can outlast almost anything.